burnout is inevitable. Oof. You got a bowling alley, you got volleyball pits. It just feels like things might be changing for the worst. The food is not good anymore. Oh my God, the food is not good anymore. Hey, and welcome back. In this video, we're gonna have a little fun today and see if it's actually worth working at Google. If you haven't heard or you don't know of Google, don't know where you've been, but it's one of the biggest tech companies here on planet Earth. And for someone who's worked as a recruiter for the past 8 years, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a bidding war with Google, and I've lost most of those times because people are just given such a really good overall package they just can't say no to. But aside from those experiences, and aside from even knowing a lot of people, acquaintances, even friends who worked in and out of Google, let's see what the internet has to say about working at Google. But before we get started, if you're excited as I am, don't forget to like, subscribe, click that bell. It really means a lot. And most importantly, the reviews that we're about to read from current and even previous employees, also just remember to kind of take them with a grain of salt, like you should always do on the internet. But without further ado, let's go check this out. So heading into Glassdoor, this is what we see on the main homepage here. You can see that, again, for those who are unfamiliar with Google, they were founded in 1998. They were based out of California. According to Glassdoor, they have 10,000 employees and do over $10 billion in revenue. And they've won a bunch of Glassdoor related awards. Good job. Good job, Google. But that's not why we're here. Let's go check out what reviews, what people are actually saying about the company. There are over 33,000 reviews. If you scroll down below, you can see that the section that Sundar Pichai, who's their current CEO right now, he has a 4.5 out of 5-star rating, which is really, really high. 90% of the people who worked at Google will recommend working at Google for a friend, and 92% previous and current employees approve of the CEO. So I've never seen ratings and reviews this high consistently across the board as we are seeing Google. So this again is starting off on a really, really high note. So as always, we are gonna sort by popular momentums and let's see what sort of juicy things that we'll be able to figure out what people are saying. This person was a former employee more than 8 years ago. Moving at the speed of light, burnout is inevitable. Oof. He or she does not recommend it. They were a program manager in California. They do not approve of the CEO, nor do they even approve of the business outlook. Pros. Food, food, food. You got 15 cafes on main campus alone. Mini kitchens, snacks, drinks, free breakfast, lunch and dinner all day, every day. I mean, who needs an apartment or a home if you work at Google? Number 2, benefits and perks. Free 24/7 gym access. Oh my God. You got free laundry, washer and dryer available. You got a bowling alley. You got volleyball pits, custom built and exclusive employee use only outdoor sports park, free health and fitness assessments, dog friendly, etc., etc., etc. And of course, you have to mention number 3, compensation. We all know Google writes those fat checks. 2010 or 2011, Google updated its compensation package so they were more competitive. Wow, so as if they weren't competitive enough. I wonder if they've done it again since then, because the salaries that I'm seeing right now are pretty crazy. For the size of the organization, about 30K, it has remained relatively innovative, nimble, and fast-paced and open with communication, but that is definitely changing for the worst. I wonder why. With so many departments, focus areas, and products, in theory, you should have plenty of opportunity to grow your career. In practice, not true. Interesting. Google is a behemoth with so many different verticals, departments, divisions, products, and I would imagine that there is literally endless room for opportunity to grow. So the fact that that may not be true for this particular position or person, that remains very interesting. All of that's dandy. I mean, this company sounds really good. If I'd never heard of Google right now and all they did was read the pros that I just did, it looks pretty amazing. Who needs a home? Who needs an apartment? You don't need to ever go to a grocery store ever again, and you probably never have to worry about money. But let's see what the cons are. Work-life balance. What balance? All those perks and benefits are an illusion. They keep you at work and they help you to be more productive. I've never met anybody at Google who actually times off on weekends or on vacations. You may not hear management say you have to work on weekends and vacations, but they set the culture by doing so, and that really trickles down. I don't know if Google inadvertently hires the workaholics or if they create workaholics in us. Regardless, I've seen way too much of the following: marriages falling apart, colleagues choosing work and projects over family, colleagues getting physically sick and ill because of stress, colleagues crying while at work because of stress, colleagues shooting out emails at midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. It's absolutely ridiculous and something needs to change. And this is, I think, a dark side of not just tech, but for many companies. I think especially for companies that offer a ridiculous amount of perks and benefits, sometimes you have to ask yourself, why? Why are they making my job so amazing that I never want to leave the office? Because maybe they want you to work around the clock. It's interesting for me to see that same sort of environment happening at a really established company like Google that's been around for such a long time. Honestly, a part of me is surprised, a part of me is also not surprised. Like, I have heard from a lot of acquaintances, people who've interviewed, people who've went there, and people who left there, and now this revalidates it that the benefits perks are good for a reason. And it's just saddens my heart, and it's really sad to see a lot of these specific examples of people's relationships falling apart, their marriage falling apart, and can't stop to contribute work to 1, 2, 3 in the morning. Like, that is not sustainable, and that would make anyone burn out. That's only reason number one. Reason number two, poor management. Interesting. And this is after, most of the people gave the CEO a 4.5, 92% rating up above. This person says, I think the issue is that a majority of people love Google because they get to work on interesting technical problems. And these are the people that see little value in learning how to develop emotional intelligence. Perhaps they enjoy technical problems because people are too difficult. People are promoted to management positions, not because they actually know how to lead or manage, but because they happen to be smart or because there is no other path to grow into. So there's a layer of intelligent individuals who are horrible managers and leaders, yet there is no value system to actually do anything about that because emotional intelligence or adaptive leaderships are not taken seriously. Like, that is a lot to unpack there, but something that I've seen as a recruiter is that, and you can see this at established companies, typically a lot of software-based companies or tech are obsessed about speed and growing so fast. And even a company like Google can be growing fast, can continue to scale. And what happens is that there's no regimented process, or they're not going to take as much time or thought like many other companies or slower growing companies to understand like what the levels are and like what it would take for someone to go from an individual contributor to senior to a manager. And essentially, if that doesn't happen and the focus is on growth, then a lot of people who might not be the best managers, who haven't developed that skill necessarily, are shoved into those positions only to figure out how to actually be a good manager. And many of them aren't. And this is something that I've seen in a lot of companies across different stages and sizes. And I think it's kind of an issue in the tech industry where so much emphasis is on growth, partially because you have to answer to stakeholders or investors or really aggressive VCs. And so a lot of the things like they're talking about emotional intelligence, adaptive leadership are just not taken seriously, or even as an afterthought, which is very, very sad and disheartening to hear. Number 3, jerks. There are a lot of brilliant people, but sadly, there are also a lot of jerks. Years ago, that wasn't the case. I don't know if the pool of candidates is getting smaller, or maybe all the folks with great personalities cashed out and left. Or maybe people are getting burned out and it's wearing on the personnel and the patience. I've heard stories of managers straight up cussing out their employees and intimidating, scaring their employees into compliance. I mean, this sort of behavior should be completely uncalled for, very unprofessional, should not exist, but unfortunately it does exist even in a large company like Google. And number 4, it's a giant company now, and inevitably it has become slower moving and is now layered with process and bureaucracy. So many political battles, empire building, territory grabbing. Google says don't be evil, but that practice doesn't seem to be put into place when it comes to internal practices. That's really interesting. I understand that the company's moving slower, and as we just talked about, there's a lot of different layers now, and because of mismanagement, because of a high culture and stress for a horrible work-life balance, work, really, I'm sure, ambitious KPIs and goals, and just becomes like a never-ending circle. You add a whole element of politics on top of that, people who are just only thinking about themselves, to be willing to step on top of others to accomplish and to further their career. It could be a recipe for disaster. It could be a recipe for a lot of things wrong with the organization. So I think from this alone, a lot of the cons are a lot deeper than a lot of the pros. The pros, this person's like, it seems to me very like surface, superficial, food, benefits, perks, and money, like that's great. But for the cons, work-life balance, management, and just awful people to work around, that can be enough for anyone to want to leave. So if you didn't know Google, you're thinking about applying right now, and all you read is this, what would you think and how would you feel? Would you leave? Would you stay? I know for a lot of people, having that perk, having amazing compensation package is enough to tolerate to a certain point, but you'll always reach a point where enough is enough. And then you have to decide, is this the right decision for me, myself, my emotional, mental health, and beyond? All right, so we got something positive here. This person writes, great balance between big company security and fun, fast-moving projects. This person was a software engineer, current employee more than 1 year, recommends this company, recommends the CEO and business outlook. So let's kind of fly through this. If you're an engineer, you're among the king of hills at Google. Very true. It's an engineer-driven company without a doubt that is changing, but still very engineering focused. Engineers are the rock stars of today, kind of like the finance bros, rock stars of yesterday. Today, it's the engineers, and it's the most competitive job you can have today in tech. And if you were to work at any reputable software company, you will be the kings, because without engineers, you can't build products. Without products, you can't sell. You have no business. You have no business model. You cease to exist. So I'm not surprised, but engineers are kings at Google. Number 2, perks are amazing. We kind of went over this. Free breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Amazing holiday parties. Waldorf Astoria, New York Public Library, MoMA. Overnight ski trips to Vermont. Overnight trips to the Poconos. Summer picnics at Chelsea Piers, and on and on and on and on and on. I don't see this going away unless the company starts hurting financially. Wow. Speaking of which, companies doing quite well, which reflects in bonuses and equity grants. So not only will you have a fat salary, but they can back it up with bonuses as well. There is a huge diversity of work ranging from defending independent journalism worldwide, like Google Project Shield, to crisis response during disasters. And I think this is the number 1 or close to a top 3 reason why I hear people want to work at Google, because it's such a massive company and it has so many products and services. You'll have a chance, hopefully, to not only end up on an incredible team, but have the opportunity to work on many different teams, many different projects throughout your career at Google. And this is not something that you can do quite easily or regularly at other companies, especially ones that are smaller or ones that only just have one core flagship product and they don't have anything else. The company is amazingly open. Every week, Larry Page and Sergey host what's called TGIF, where food, beer, and wine is served. A new project is presented, and afterwards is an open forum to ask the executives anything you want. It's truly fair game to ask anything, no matter how controversial. Frequently, the executives will be responsive. I think this is absolutely fantastic for a company that has scale to a size of theirs. I think this should be a goal for any founders, that no matter how many layers separate you from like the newest hire, the most junior hire, you should always have and make an effort to be transparent and open as much as possible. Nobody cares if you use an iPhone, Facebook, and shop at Amazon, or stream using Spotify. The company is amazingly open and flexible. That's awesome. Work-life balance can be what you want on most teams. Some teams are in more competitive sectors and require more crazy hours all the time, but very few of them, if you do what's expected, you'll be fine at least for a handful of years. Working roughly 40 hours a week is possible, and many do it. There are also people who are hyper motivated and work like crazy just because they love it or because they're competitive and they want to get a promotion. If you work 40 hours without putting in anything extra, you'll fall behind as they advance and you stand still. And maybe that doesn't matter, so it doesn't work out for you, but at least you know where you realistically stand. I think this is a great explanation of like the internal dynamics at Google. I think it really depends on a team. I have interviewed and I have recruited for teams where some teams are more notorious than others, and some managers are all about, taking Fridays off and being flexible, while other managers want everyone to be in the office or work like 10, 12 hours a day. I think the team matters a lot, but I think it seems like aside from that, Google just has a culture where they just hire the brightest people, and naturally a lot of them will be competitive. A lot of them will have ambitious, aggressive goals. Now to kind of motivate you to at least keep up with it instead of slacking off so much and kind of doing your own thing. If you'll excel and work your butt off, you'll be compensated and promoted. If you let yourself be a code monkey and just sit coding with your head down all day, you'll be fine, but you won't advance. Code monkeys are important to actually get stuff done. And to be sure, you absolutely need to get a good coder as an engineer. It's a minimum requirement, but code monkeys won't advance because they're not leaders and they're easy to replace. To get promoted, you need to lead and to do more than just code. There are plenty of ways to lead other than being an official tech lead. So this isn't actually that hard of a real point. I think this is like really interesting. I think in smaller companies, because they're just so desperate on retaining good engineers, I think if you're a good code monkey and you're just a good coder, naturally you just progress from engineer, senior, lead, staff, manager, and beyond. I think in a larger company like Google, you have to do a lot more because they're hiring and they're always hiring so much good talent. I think just being a code monkey, while it's good enough for smaller companies or early companies, it's not good enough in Google. And kind of like what traditional viewpoint of management is, it's a lot more than just the work. It's all about relationships, politics, learning how to schmooze, learning how to lead. So it seems like that second component is just as important at Google than just being really good at the sole core fundamentals of coding. And so this is another reason why I think a lot of people leave Google. If you're an engineer, some of them just don't care for excelling, and some of them don't care for the politics and lead, but some of them just want to continue what they're doing right now, which to this be code monkey, but they just want to be able to progress naturally like that. And I think if you fall in that camp, it might make them better sense. Check out other smaller companies, fast growth companies where you can get more of a leadership position. You can still do what you love, which is coding, and not have to worry about a lot of the excess of working at a bureaucratic, larger establishment like Google. But either way, I think this was really well said and very interesting. Now, real quick, let's just see a couple cons. Becoming larger, and with it comes growing pains, bureaucracy, slow to respond to market threats, bloated teams. I think this is all typical stuff that you see at large companies. The quality of the engineers is possibly dropping, interesting, but possibly not. It's hard to get real metrics because as the absolute number of people grow, naturally the number of bad apples grow. As a percentage, it's supposedly the same as it ever was, but with larger number of poor quality engineers. It just feels like things might be changing for the worse. I can't really know what to say about that. I do know that in this market right now, as I'm filming this, it seems like they're willing to hire anyone from zero experience, fresh out of boot camps, to literally anyone. And so I think if that is the kind of mindset, then of course the more you hire, the larger the chance you'll be getting, more poor quality candidates, right? But at the end of the day, like even 7-8 years ago, 10 years ago, Google, it seemed like they did the same thing now. It just seems like they're a little bit more aggressive, continuing to kind of expand the pool that they're offering and just throwing a bunch of money at it. So I can see how maybe if you're a current employee, you went through a rigorous computer science degree, and then you went through reputable companies before you joined Google, and then you're now working with colleagues who have little to no experience, fresh out of boot camp. If you're like a real stickler for that, or if somehow you see yourself larger than other people because you have a CS degree, and because they don't have a CS degree, you're quote unquote better than them. I can see how some engineers who might consider themselves to be the rock stars or the elitists of the company might have that attitude. But there are also many people who have come out of non-traditional backgrounds that have equivalent or better than people who have traditional experiences. So either way, I still think that's really insightful. Very mixed experience. Software engineer in California. The product my team is building is very important to Google. I'm very happy to work in this team with my smart, excellent peers. I think everyone wants to join a critical team, especially at a FANG or big tech company. If you're a new grad or need to spend time caring your family, Google is an excellent company in terms of work-life balance. Cutting edge tech, if you something have truly passion for, go for it. Do not waste your valuable time working for the experience in a big name. Yeah, so great cutting edge technology, great work-life balance compared to the other reviews that we read. It must be on a good team. Google moves very slow. All things are about reliability and stabness, which is very important. So this is what I do when I interface with candidates who are interviewing with a lot of smaller companies, but they also have a couple interviews with Googles or Amazons of the world. One of the biggest differences I like to make is that bigger companies, yes, they move slower because there's just so many more people, so many more cross stakeholders that you have to get approvals for, so many more systems and processes. It's just more bureaucratic. It's not like a 10-person team where you can have direct relationship with the CEO or founder or the VP or CTO, and then you can just literally talk to him, Slack her, and then you get an answer, and then you can move very, very fast and iterate. So a lot of people who work at Google who want a fast-paced environment, a lot of those opportunities do exist because they have a lot of startup teams inside Google, but from on the whole, to generalize, you will find a lot of teams that move slower than more fast-paced, agile, smaller companies. So if you like fast, agile, you like chaos, smaller companies might be better for you. But if you like the opposite, larger companies might be better for you too. But there is still an opportunity to get best of both worlds. The food is not good anymore. Oh my God, the food is not good anymore after all the reviews that we saw. I mean, it seemed incredible, like the Four Seasons of the Ritz. This person had a review in 2022, been at Google for over 5 years. So this person would have gone through a lot of the necessary changes from a company that's organically growing. But according to this, only about a week ago, this person said the food is not good anymore. Food to me is like really, really big. So that's kind of really, really sad. Let's do one more here. This person was a cloud of technical residents. Great program to get into Google. Free food and snacks, excellent benefits, fun coworkers, positive work environments, flexible hybrid, all that good stuff. Your experience is very dependent on the team and you end up rotating with, so mileage may vary. If you end up with a team without much work, you have to actively search around for things to do. Information is provided with little warning. The program can be changed on the fly and you will not know where and what role you will be placed until a week before it happens, which is a little bit opposite of what we learned about Google, that they move really, really slow and sometimes too slow for a lot of people. But I think, again, it really depends on the position, the team, the department you are at Google. You begin as L2 rather than usual L3. Okay, so L2, L3 refers to like the leveling and the seniority leveling of an employee. So I guess if you were really senior before, you can join Google as maybe a step down. I think tech title is very fluid for a lot of companies. The bigger companies tend to have more structured leveling. And so what I mean by that is they know specifically like a lot of data points of, why you should be L1 or L2 or L3, while, newer, fast growth, smaller companies will be a lot more fluid. They'll just kind of like round up. So if you have, 3 years plus, they'll call you mid-level. If you have 4 to 6 years plus, they'll call you a senior. But in Google, Facebook, Amazon is a lot more regimented. And so you might be a lead before you join Google, but then, when you join Google, you're now just a software engineer. Or if you're like a senior product manager, you're now just a product manager. What do you guys think about the reviews? I think we've read a good handful. We're starting to get a theme here. I think, as I mentioned before, big companies tend to be slower, more bureaucratic, more systems. It takes a lot more effort to get things done, to make decisions. And of course, working at a company like Google, they have an amazing perks and free food and benefits and compensation. You can get paid very, very well. But on the other hand, we're starting to see a lot of things that people don't normally talk about, from work-life balance issues to management issues to being just so bureaucratic and politics and just being surrounded by people who don't treat people well. And you can say that this is a problem that's specific to Google, but a lot of these are problems that you find in really any workplace. But despite that, on the whole, we can say that overall people still very much approve the CEO and founder. He seems to be doing a really, really good job. And despite a lot of the criticisms, people still constantly say it's a great place to have a job, to have a career, to be a part of cutting edge technology and to work on really great products and services that potentially can impact many people around the world. The more I read this, the more it's just no surprise as to why Google has the reputation that it does and why so many people, both inexperienced and both experienced, would love nothing more than to work at a company like Google one of these days. The biggest sad thing for me is that it seems like the food quality is going down. But if, for example, I got a big offer from Google and maybe the only red flag I had is possibly less food quality, that's not going to stop me from accepting. So have you worked at Google? Do you know anyone who worked at Google? If you read these reviews, what do you think? Are you excited? Would you still apply? What are some things that really kind of stood out to you? What are some things that really surprised you? And if you like this video, you want to see more like it, please, and you want me to comment and give feedback on another company, please give me some ideas down below. We'd love to kind of make this into a series and just have a fun discussion, share my honest thoughts about what I think it would be to work and recruit at these companies. But working at Google still seems to be the king, the destination for a lot of people in tech, specifically engineers. And it seems to be without a doubt a goal for many, many people to one day work at Google for a long term or just experience it once in their life. But this was a lot of fun. I actually learned a lot. It gives me a lot of additional insight knowledge that I can utilize to be a better recruiter, to be able to better connect people who are either at Google, coming out of there, interviewing at Google, to help me just overall do my job better. But I hope you enjoy this. Feel free to also follow me at Preston_Park as I try my best to always post daily. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.